Welcome to another truck hardware installation video. Today, we're working on a 2025 Lincoln Navigator. Please note that there are both a stainless steel option and a black anodized aluminum option for this vehicle, and the hardware will slightly vary depending on which option you have chosen, so pay attention to the included installation instructions with your kit. We also want to make note that these mud flaps will work on vehicles with a power running board. The running board will just need to be slightly moved to make sure the mud flap works on the vehicle. Before we begin, we want to note that this video is filmed using a Ford Expedition. The installation for the Ford Expedition mud flaps and the Lincoln Navigator mud flaps are nearly identical. So if you notice any small visual differences between your vehicle and this one, that's why. Now let's get started on the front mud flap. To start, if your vehicle has a power running board, we're going to need to make some minor adjustments to its position. So, in its default position, the power running board will hit the mud flap when extending down from the vehicle. So we need to move it back by loosening the fasteners on the two brackets for the running board. These are what are holding the bar in place and are located here. To loosen them, use a 5mm Allen wrench and a 10mm socket. Make sure you loosen both the front and rear brackets. With everything loosened, slide the running board back so you have room to install the mud flap. This should be very easy to do on a newer vehicle, but it may be a little more resistant on a used vehicle. And remember, later on, once the mud flap is installed, we'll move the running board again, so don't be too worried about its current position. Then, grab the bracket included with your kit and install a spring nut onto the hole seen here. And install it onto the two bolts located on the underside of your vehicle. Secure the bracket in place using two serrated flange nuts. Next, remove the push pin in the wheel well circled here. And pull back the liner from the hole where we removed the push pin, and place a spring nut over top of this hole like seen here. Now let's get the mud flap ready for installation, and peel off the friskets on your stainless steel uppers. Take the flap and position a GM clip into the slotted hole on the top of the flap, like seen here. Loosely secure this clip in place using a cap screw, a flat washer, and a spacer washer. Repeat this step for the next slotted hole on the flap. Now grab your flap and attach the hole circled here to the bracket using a cap screw and a flat washer. Once secure, position the mount clips you installed earlier behind the fender lip. An example of how the clips should sit can be seen in the following footage. Once in place, loosely tighten the clips. Now secure the last hole using a sheet metal screw and a flat washer. With a square or other leveling tool, make sure the mud flap is level. We also recommend you take a step back and visually gauge the mud flap to check that it is lined correctly. Once your flap is level, secure all fasteners. We suggest you tighten this hardware by hand and be careful not to over tighten any fasteners. With the mud flap level and secure, let's go back to the power running board and move it into its final position. Push it back towards the mud flap and leave at least a 1/4 inch gap between the mud flap and the end of the running board, like seen here. Resecure the running board by tightening the hardware we loosened earlier. With that done, your front mud flaps are installed. Now let's move on to the rear of the vehicle. To start, remove the 3 push pins circled here. As mentioned before, this video was filmed using a Ford Expedition. The Lincoln Navigator will not have the push pin seen here. Now, pull back the liner and position some spring clips onto the holes circled here. Once those are in place, put the liner back to where it was. Next, take your mud flap and secure the hole here to the factory hole circled here using a sheet metal screw and a flat washer. When positioning your flap onto the vehicle, make sure you tuck the ear of the stainless steel upper behind the liner like seen here. Repeat this step for the next 2 holes on the flap. Make sure you don't over tighten this hardware so you can still maneuver the mud flap if needed. With a square or other leveling tool, make sure the mud flap is level. We also recommend you take a step back and visually gauge the mud flap to check that it is aligned correctly. Once your flap is level, secure all fasteners. We suggest you tighten this hardware by hand and be careful not to over tighten any fasteners. Finally, using a 1/4 inch drill bit, drill through the liner using the mud flap hole seen here as a guide. Attach the mud flap to this hole using a cap screw and a flat washer. Secure this hardware from behind using a flat washer, a lock washer, and a hex nut. This hardware can be seen fully installed in the following clips. Congratulations! You've just finished installing your Gatorback Mudflaps. If you found this video helpful, give us a like and subscribe. Check out the rest of our channel and website for additional tips, tricks, and installation guides. Thanks for choosing Truck Hardware.